Welcome, everybody. Anybody here for the first time tonight? Bunch of new folks. Welcome to everybody who's joining us for the first time. Anybody at home that's tuning in for the first time, welcome. I like to start class by giving you something to discuss with each other, so that Against the Stream is a place not just to meditate and learn about Buddhism, but to help you develop some community, to meet each other. One of the core tenets of Buddhism is called Sangha. It's a term that we translate as community, and the importance of having a community and having friends and that are also meditators, that are also on this journey, on this path, this very alternative way of looking at the world and understanding ourselves and behaving and living in this world. So tonight I'll give you, let me ask you a question. What kind of personality do you have? Like what do you know about your personality? And sometimes we're so identified with it, we're like, that's just who I am. But part of us is that we have a persona, a personality, tendencies. And you know, in the Western world, we tend to kind of say, well, I'm an introvert or I'm an extrovert. The Buddha broke personalities, and this is what I'm going to talk about later, but he broke it down into greed, hatred, and delusion. So without me explaining, some of you know, you've heard this, you've thought about it, but I think even more interesting for those of you that don't know this and haven't diagnosed yourself, what do you think you are? You think your personality is like greed-based or hatred-based? Are you a fucking hater? Are you super lustful, greedy, craving? You know what, you know, when you, or deluded, just like delusional, self-centered, spaced out, like, what do you think your personality is? And how much do you try to not take it personal? It's interesting, like personality, it's like personal's in the definition. Personality type. Of course, in Buddhism, we're trying to learn that we're not this mind, this body, this personality, that there's an awareness that goes beyond identification with the personality or the body or the ego self. And if you're brand new, you know, then probably the humble, honest answer is, yeah, I pretty much take it all personal all the time. I pretty much believe my mind and obey it, and that's why I'm in rehab. Or that's why I got court ordered, or that's why my therapist said, you need to go fucking meditate. That's the, you know, humble truth for us in the beginning. Usually without meditation, we just are identified. But the more you meditate, the more you examine your mind and your personality and your tendencies, the more you start to see like, oh, it's not really who I am, but it is how my mind functions. And I tend to believe my mind, or I'm starting to loosen my identity over the years or decades of meditation. So that's your topic for discussion. What kind of personality, greed, hatred, or delusion? I'll talk about it later, and then you can re-diagnose yourself. And we'll talk about how, you know, useful it is, especially I think going into the holidays, to see, yeah, I'm going to go and deal with people, and I'm going to be aversive because I always am, and have a realistic expectation that like it's gonna, you know, or I'm gonna be, you know, I'm gonna have the craving for this family dynamic to be different than it is, because that's just how I, you know, function. I always feel that way. Or I'll be deluded enough that, you know, what Thanksgiving, what family dynamic. Anyways, I'll talk about that after. At home, I'm gonna put you in breakout groups. In the room, just try to find a couple people you don't already know and talk about your personality and how personal you take it, how much you believe it, how often. Good enough? All right, go. It is through mindfulness, meditation, that we will become more aware of our personality tendencies, and also begin to change our relationship to the ways that our personality tendencies create unnecessary suffering for us. All of the Buddhist conversation is about how do we suffer and how can we end suffering, how can we suffer less and have a greater sense of ease and well-being that's not dependent on things, including our own mind, being any different than they are. A change in relationship to what's happening, a change in relationship to our personality and our sense of self, and seeing more clearly. And without meditation, it's thought to be impossible, but with meditation, it's thought to be quite possible to have some major transformation and relief, alleviation of the causes of suffering. This is the Buddha's teaching, so we'll have a period of not silent, but sitting meditation. I'll give some instructions. And the first instruction is find a way to sit that's upright and relaxed. Find a posture that feels sustainable, where your body is held upright but not rigid or stiff. And as you're ready, allow your eyes to be closed. Relaxing into the posture, releasing any unnecessary tension in the face, the trunk of the body, releasing the shoulders, the belly soft. Or softening as much as you can. And it's quite useful to establish your intention to be kind, to be patient, to be tolerant, compassionate towards your experience. Again, we're not meditating to create some specific outcome, but just to be aware of what's happening moment to moment. So meet whatever happens, your mind, your body, your emotions, with as much friendliness as you can. The Buddha started his meditation instructions quite simply. He said, breathing in, know that you're breathing in. Breathing out, know that you're breathing out. So we spend the first few minutes of our practice just simply attuning, directing our attention to the breath. Mindfulness of breathing. Letting everything else recede to the background, the thoughts, the sounds, the other sensations in the body, as we direct our awareness to the sensation the breath creates as we breathe in and out, with an encouragement towards awareness being receptive of the breath. No need to control it or breathe any certain way. Just awareness of how your body breathes, the natural rhythm of the breath. We're not trying to stop our minds. But in the beginning here, we are trying to stop paying attention to the mind as we direct our attention to the breath. Let the thoughts be in the background. Come back to the breath. Some find it helpful to note in and out, tracking the coming and going of the sensations of the breath. And likewise, when the awareness wanders into thinking, to just note it, name thinking. Perhaps you're aware it's a plan or a memory or fantasy. And then disengage, return to the breath. Am I breathing in or out? Present time, non-judgmental awareness of the breath. If you're new to this kind of meditation, you can keep it simple. Just keep coming back to your breath. Keep disengaging from your mind. Returning to the breath, which starts to give you the awareness that the mind continues to think without your input, your permission. The Buddha's encouragement was to expand beyond a narrow focus on the breath to a more inclusive awareness of the whole body. Mindfulness of the posture, sitting. Feel the contact with the chair or the cushion. Sitting upright, know that you're sitting upright. Feel your hands resting on your legs and your lap. Opening to the sense doors of hearing and seeing, smelling and tasting, as well as emotion and thought, plans and memories, joy and sorrow, whatever's here with present time, non-judgmental awareness. The intention to meet it all with kindness, with acceptance. As we bring awareness to our experience, it becomes more clear, more obvious that everything is impermanent. Every breath comes and goes. As we observe the mind, we start to see how thoughts arise and pass. Emotions, sounds, everything passing through awareness. Nothing permanent, nothing stable. Also trying to bring some awareness to not just what's happening, this thought the mind is aware of, but what are the feeling tones of your experience? Where is there pleasure in the body or mind, heart? Where is there discomfort or unpleasantness, pain in the body or mind? And how much of our experience is actually neutral, neither pleasant nor unpleasant? The second foundation of mindfulness, we begin to see how much suffering we create based on resisting what's happening, meeting our pain with anger or fear, aversion. Meeting the pleasant with craving and clinging, attachment. Present time, non-judgmental awareness of what's happening and how it feels as it arises and passes through awareness. Present time awareness of what's happening and how it feels, with the intention to respond to our pain with kindness, compassion, accepting rather than resisting the unpleasant thoughts and feelings. The intention to meet the pleasant with non-attached appreciation, knowing the mind's tendency towards craving and clinging. We try to let go. Each breath, softening the belly, letting go of the past, the future, returning to the present time experience of this breath, arising and passing. For the last couple of minutes, if you'd like to, turn towards loving kindness, metta, by simply saying to yourself, may I be at ease, just as I am. May I learn to be at ease with this body, this heart, mind, this personality, as well as the personalities of others. May I learn to be at ease. And extending this goodwill, this wish to those sitting next to you, in front of you and behind you. May you find peace in your life. May you be at ease with your mind, with the joy and sorrow in your life. Extending this same wish to your friends and family, parents and children, outward in all directions, to all living beings. May all beings find the willingness to do what needs to be done, to train the mind, the heart, and wisdom and compassion. May all beings learn to be at ease, free from suffering. Before I get into the talk about personality types, any questions about the meditation instructions themselves, or how to meditate, how to work with this mindfulness instruction? You don't have a question about how to meditate, but go ahead, Juan.
Just a suggestion. I just got back from a retreat.
Yeah.
And it was underscored to me once again.
Yeah.
How easily we slip into controlling our breath instead of just letting things happen and picking up on the sense, the vedana, the reaction to it, etc. What kind of advice would you give someone who's new to meditation, who's having trouble doing just that?
Could you hear the question at home, or should I repeat it? No. Question is, if somebody's having difficulty, that the encouragement, and I think I said it in the beginning, is to try to allow your body to breathe in its own natural rhythm, and to not try to control or manipulate or try to breathe any certain way. Just awareness of how your body wants to breathe. And it's hard. A lot of people report, like, as soon as I bring my attention to my breath, feels like I'm controlling it. I'm breathing in deep, or I'm breathing. And then, that I think that's also complicated by a lot of people's, yoga practices. Like, you go to yoga and you learn, and they say, well, breathe in this way and breathe out that way, or these different sort of breath awareness, techniques, or, and so Buddhism does have this very simplified encouragement, which says, don't control your breath. Don't, like, if it's deep, great. No, I'm breathing deep. If it's shallow, great. No, I'm breathing shallow. But just completely, the intention is be aware of how your body's breathing without controlling or manipulating it. Partially in service to the whole mindfulness deal is awareness of what is without controlling, without, letting go of that tendency to try to create an experience through deep breath. And just, accepting reality as it is, and accepting the body's impersonal tendencies as they are. So the core question, I think, it sounds like from one is, what if you're struggling with that? What if that's difficult for you to do? I don't know. Mostly I land in, like, just, it's okay if it feels like, especially in the beginning, if you feel like you can't not control your breath and you feel like you're controlling that's okay. Don't judge it too much. If you'll catch yourself, clicking back into yogic pranayama breathing and just be like, oh, I'm doing that again. Okay, let me try to let go. But I keep going back to that kind of, in through the nose, out through the mouth, or the, what is that called when you like the back of your throat and you're like, which, some meditation techniques encourage. In Buddhism, we don't. In this kind of Buddhism, we don't. So I don't know, I kind of come back to like, keep trying to relax into allowing the body to breathe you. That's an interesting way to think about it. Rather than I am breathing, my body, my breath is breathing me, breathing itself. Does it feel, to me, it feels like that sometimes, where it's just like, there's awareness here, aware of the body breathing all by itself. And when you can relax enough into it, that becomes clear and obvious. But it's a common phenomena that Juan is pointing towards, where a lot of times we're so identified and so kind of tight, it feels like we're controlling it. And I mostly say, like, no big deal, keep meditating. Feel like you're controlling the breath, keep investigating that, no big deal. But hear the encouragement that that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying not to control it. We're trying to let go, let the body just breathe. Anything else? I see one at home. Alice, go ahead.
Hi. So I was wondering if you have any advice for when the mind is scattered. Like in my case, I was having so much trouble paying attention that I missed the instructions that you were giving.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes narrower focus on the breath and the noting, breathing in, breathing, and giving the mind, when the mind is real busy, sometimes giving it something to do will help. Labeling, noting, even counting the breath, like kind of that simple, oh, I'm all over the place in the future and the past. But if I just come back to like breathing in 1, breathing out 2, breathing in 3, then I'm off in scattered thought again, and then come back, start over, breathing in 1, breathing out 2. Maybe you get to 3 or 4 and then you're gone again and you come back. Or noting in, out, giving the mind some task, labeling, noting. Sometimes that helps. Sometimes nothing helps that much. And what you're doing is you're just sitting here aware of the scatteredness or the busyness or the chaoticness of your mind. And you just accept that. I'm just going to sit here and my mind's all over the fucking place. And I'm not really hearing the instructions or feeling my breath that much. And you just accept it's going to be like that tonight. Okay, let's see what happens. I'm going to think about a bunch of maybe cool shit or bullshit, or and I'm just going to sit here. And sometimes after a while, I don't know what happened for you tonight, Alice, but once in a while, when you do that and you don't try to, you just accept that, sometimes the mind settles. Sometimes it doesn't. And it's okay. Sometimes you have those meditations where just scattered mind the whole time, but still, I got my ass on the cushion and I gave my 30 minutes or my 40 minutes and the consistency will build to, sometimes it's situational. I don't know, Alice, if you can identify, sometimes when something's going on, some difficulties, or even if you're like excited about something, you got a trip coming up, or you're really worried about the holidays this week, or which just gives the mind sort of like, more tendency to be busy, then harder to settle. And sometimes not a lot of big things are going on in your life, and you have more success with settling, and just kind of being more present with hearing the instructions and being with the breath. Ian, I'll take this last question, then I'll get to my personality talk. Go ahead, Ian.
Hey, hopefully it's a quick one for you. So I'm fairly new to the practice, only a couple months in here, and I've been really struggling to, I think, even set up or start practicing, besides, coming to Sangha, I guess, here. What the fuck else do I do? I'm reading, I have, a couple books from Plum Village and, and I think I'm going, but I guess I'm just looking for a little guidance. Sorry. Appreciate it.
I mean, it's a great question. It's an important question. I don't know that I totally have the answer. I can give you a couple of helpful things, hopefully. First we have to set the intention. You read about Buddhism, you hear it, and you're like, sounds like a good idea. I'd like to, meditation and the benefits of meditation, and sounds like a good idea. And now I want to apply it. I want to put it to work in my life. And the intention that Ian's talking about of, I'd like to develop a daily meditation practice, but right now I'm going to class once a week and I'm meditating once a week. And it's not quite happening on my own. And it's a lot easier when you're sitting here in a group and, on the Zoom or in person, and somebody's giving you the instructions and you're just like, okay, I'm here. But to get on the cushion or chair or whatever, on the meditation posture at home and self-guide yourself is challenging. Some of the things that are helpful, part of it is just schedule it. 7 a.m. every day, period. Just like brushing your teeth, schedule it. You might find that gets you on the cushion 2 or 3 days a week, and then eventually 4, and then 5, and then, find that time in your schedule where it fits, make it fit, make room for it. And then before you fully know the meditation instructions, it is very useful to have guided meditations like I'm doing here. Listen to them. There, now there's a whole bunch of different meditation apps, and some of them are decent. Some of them are pretty sort of like mindfulness light and aren't giving you the full Buddhist instruction, but even those in the beginning, useful. Just that reminder, come back to your breath, come back to the present. 10-minute meditations or 15-minute meditations. Every Monday night is recorded and is on the podcast and on Zoom. So if my instructions resonate with you, 30-minute meditations, listen to those until you know how to do the mindfulness and know how to do the loving kindness and the compassion and the forgiveness. So those guided meditations will help. And community really helps. And I don't know, Ian, who asked the question, I don't know where you live, but it's so, if you can actually develop in-person community where you meet people and you meditate with people and you get that regular reminder of the Buddha's teachings, and it's key. For me, it's always been key. But a lot of people I know who come to our Zoom live in places where you don't have a teacher or a community to practice with, and you're stuck with this online thing, which is pretty good. I imagine it's better than nothing, but it's not the same as actually having a community to practice with. So if there is, and even I encourage people, even if it's not really like your heart teacher or your like perfect teacher, but there are teachers and communities, go sit with them anyways. Sometimes, as long as it's like, I don't know, not totally a terrible community. I always feel hesitant to say this kind of stuff because I feel guilty. Like sometimes I'm encouraging people to go sit in communities that I personally would never sit with because I think they're really bad. Bad as in like out of integrity and, maybe even unsafe in some ways for some people. So, but find a good community, be careful. But, I wrote that chapter in Against the Stream. I think it's the last chapter in the Against the Stream book that's titled Beware of Teachers. So like teachers are good, but also like be skeptical because there's a lot of weird shit that happens and culty shit that happens. And so, find good teachers, but also be skeptical, healthy skepticism. I hope some of those were helpful, but really just having that intention of like, I want to develop a practice and then just start doing it more and finding more groups and more, podcasts and things that get you on the cushion that support your practice. All right, so personality types. What do I want to say? First, I want to put in the context that what Buddhism teaches is that all suffering for all living beings is based in greed, hatred, or ignorance or delusion, So first, just kind of sit in that and reflect on your own life. Has any of my suffering came from anything other than ignorance, Greed, which means lust and clinging and craving, all of that sort of wanting to keep, wanting to get, wanting to, needing, that feeling of I need this moment to be different than it is in order to be happy. And hatred, which isn't always the big sort of like, I fucking hate this or that. It's just aversion, the subtle, I need this moment to be different. I hate the way it is. I don't accept the way it is. I'm not very good at being uncomfortable or bored, or and I hate it when I'm bored or uncomfortable or lonely or having, difficult emotions. And also important context with what we're talking about in Buddhism, which is that pain is not the cause of suffering. And that the whole Buddhist promise that we can end suffering nowhere says, well, there's one place where it says it, but mostly nowhere says you can end pain. Just that we can change our relationship to pain and not meet it with hatred. That we can meet it with compassion. We can meet it with wisdom, with acceptance. Doesn't, you can get enlightened and life will still sometimes be painful. Having a body with a nervous system means you have physical pain. And having a heart and a mind, even an awakened heart and mind, mean, you still have afflictive emotions. Meditation doesn't lead to completely, getting rid of difficult emotions. Just a wiser and wiser relationship to fear and anger and the afflictive emotions. Does that make sense? I hope so, because that context is very important in order for what we're trying to do to be practical and possible. We have to have the context that we're not thinking that eventually we're going to be transcending our humanness, but we're actually going to be embodying full humanness with a wise relationship, the humanness of emotion and sensation and ego and a mind that creates a self-centeredness, ignorance. All of that continues. From what I hear. I don't really know because I'm not enlightened, but what I hear is that even the kind of full liberation includes pain and difficult emotions. And I think that's important. So greed, hatred, and delusion is natural, is universal in some way or another. And in this teaching, the Buddha says, not only do we see it as the cause of all of the suffering in the world, but then we see it as all of the suffering in ourselves, and we can start to refine it and see, oh, my personality has a tendency towards craving, greed, aversion, anger, hatred, or ignorance, delusion. How many of you, I don't know really how to do this at home. I guess you could raise your hands in the reaction button if you wanted to, but how many of you diagnosed yourself and are pretty sure that you're a greed personality type? I am. How many of you diagnosed yourself and are pretty sure that you're an aversive, a hatred personality type? Okay. The rest of you are ignorant? Ignorant as in not sure, or as in deluded? If you think you're all three, it's true, right? We are all three. I wonder if those of us who are committed to being all three are really just greed types. I want to be all three. I don't want to just have one, I want three. We all constantly experience craving and aversion and some levels of ignorance and delusion. So, these are universal for all of us. Here's the classic way, I think it's in the Abhidhamma or maybe some of the commentaries, where they talk about how you can diagnose yourself. They say when you first walk into a room, so those of you here, remember, like some of you are here for the first time tonight walking into the room. I'm not quite sure if it works the same walking into a Zoom room, sitting down to a Zoom room, but when you first walk into a room, do you generally notice what you like or don't like about the space? It said that aversive types will first see what they don't like. Immediately kind of a critical focus on what's wrong. Like, why is it set up like this? And these carpets and this, like they'll see, the kind of burn marks or smudges or, coming up the stairs. See, like, well, these haven't been swept this week, have they? And that'll be the focus. The greed type will first see what they like. They'll notice the lack of, the dirty stairs or the dirty carpets or whatever, but they'll kind of get more focused on, well, I like the comfortable chairs, or I like the art, or, the eye will go towards what they like about the space and focus more on that of, the deluded types might not be totally aware of this, didn't even notice the stairs or the carpets or the art, maybe a little bit. I mean, you can't sort of avoid the fucking massive paintings behind me, but the aversive types are like, I just don't like those paintings. The Buddha's cool, but what are those fucking monsters? I don't like those. Or, I like the Mahakala, but the Buddha's like, that's a weird Buddha. And the deluded types might not be quite as, sometimes deluded, you're a little spaced out about the material things, and it's not so important. You're sort of in your head, you're kind of scattered, I was thinking about myself the whole time. I'm not really focused on the art or the space. I'm more worried about, like, am I going to be accepted here? Am I, do I fit in, or is this the right place? Or Noah said, beware of teachers. Maybe I should beware of him. Like, kind of more in your head about it. And if you can start to see that tendency of your personality, like, again, greed type, like myself, I'll have a lot of desire, a lot of wanting. I'm somewhat optimistic and but a lot of, like, I'll walk into a space and I'll see what I like about it, but then there's this kind of, and I want it. Like, I'll see like, I saw these paintings somewhere and I was like, oh, I like those. I have to have them. Like, and that tendency towards, but then the second thought might be like, well, I like the art, but couldn't they get some new chairs? These things are fucking falling apart. And when was the last time these stairs were swept? Or how about these carpets? Have they been shampooed lately? Or whatever it is, that critical tendency is still there. It's just not it's not the first thing, second thing, or third thing. And likewise for the aversive or the deluded, maybe it wasn't what you noticed at first, but once you settled into the space and felt like, okay, I got my, then you start noticing what you like and you don't like. It wasn't the primary. The aversive type comes in and says, I don't like A, B, and C, but I do like D, E, and F. But it's the second thought. It's not the primary. It's not the first. Beginning to does this change anything? You don't have to answer, but just reflecting on when we can start to see, oh, that's just how my mind works. It's not really who I am. Like I said earlier, the more you meditate, the more you see my mind has a mind of its own. and it has tendencies, and it has greed and hatred and delusion. It's not that personal. It's not your fault, but it's part of being me. It's part of being you. And when we commit to say, hey, I want to suffer less, I want to be more free, I want to be happier, it's going to become necessary to have some discernment, to not believe all of our thoughts and to not take them all so personally. And our personality, and just see like, oh, yeah, of course I'm always wanting stuff, or I'm always critical of stuff. It's not who I am, but it is my experience. It is often how I'm going to be perceiving things. One moment. I found some things from the Visuddhimagga that were interesting. It said, this is commentary. It says that the greedy type has a tendency to seize on trivial virtues of others and discount genuine faults. You ever do that? Where like in relationship, you're kind of like, well, they're really cool in this way, and you just kind of dismiss their genuine faults. And when departing, so when the greed type, when leaving a space, they do so with regret, as if unwilling to leave. Like greed types are like, wait, especially when it's a pleasant experience, they're like the last ones. They want to stay. They want to, soak it up. When it's time to leave, they're like, fuck, I don't want to leave. I want to stay. That was interesting commentary. It says for the aversive types, they pick out trivial faults and discount genuine virtue. You ever find yourself doing that? Where it's like somebody's like a pretty good person, but you really get focused on a trivial fault and discount their genuine virtues. And when departing, they do so without regret, as if being anxious to leave. The aversive type is like, I can't wait to get the fuck out of here. How many? 20 more minutes? Okay, I can deal with it. That's it. I'm gonna leave 5 minutes early though. You somebody that likes to leave early? It says, again, the Visuddhimagga is a commentary on Buddhism. It says, when one of the deluded temperament sees any sort of visible object, they copy what others do. If they hear others criticizing, they criticize. You ever find that tendency of like, well, I don't really know my own views and opinions, so I'll just go with the crowd. You guys hate it? I fucking hate it too. They hear others praising, they praise. Oh, you guys think this is cool? I fucking love it. You like that band? Great. Best band. But actually they feel equanimity in themselves, but it's the equanimity of not knowing, not having a strong view either way. And not being so pulled by the craving or the aversion that they're, deluded types, ignorant types, kind of just like, well, I don't know, I just want to fit in. So what do you hate? Yeah, I hate that too. What do I got to do to earn love around here? I'll do it. I think it might be in the Visuddhimagga too, where there's some description of how greed types walk like almost like dragging their feet. Like they want to like drag the sensation of, and aversive types sort of stomp, kind of like, I forget what the deluded type description is. If you can get some sense of this, it's so helpful. There's then also encouragement towards, there's a positive side. It said that if you can come to see your personality as greed that the positive side, that for most greed types, is a tendency towards faith and confidence. So like if you're a greed type and you start studying Buddhism and you start practicing meditation, and you're just like, well, I want to be awakened. I want to end suffering, right? That's the next shiny object that I want, liberation. And greed types will often be motivated by, so I'll meditate every day and I'll go to the retreats and I'll practice the precepts. And what do I have to do to get what I want? How can I get it? And I have the confidence that it's possible. If it's possible, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it. Motivated by greed on some level. The aversive types, come into the Dharma and have a little bit more of that, what's called discerning wisdom. Like, yes, there's anger, and yes, there's aversion, but also a lot of the things that the aversive types are critical of is actually true. The stairs are actually dirty. They need to be swept. And coming into a community or some of the stuff around Buddhism, they'll be like, well, I like this part of the teaching. But I feel so aversive to, some of the power dynamics or the history of sexism in the religion or whatever it is. And that stuff is true. And it's discernment that we're angry about, that we're aversive to. So there's a discerning wisdom. I think for those two, it's interesting to say, like, do you want to get free because you want to have the experience of freedom and you're craving for the experience of freedom? Or do you want to get free because you hate not being free? Because you're aversive to suffering. Both sides are true for us, but looking at your own mind, am I trying to create an experience or am I trying to get away from an experience? It's kind of both and, right? I want to get away from this suffering and towards freedom, but what's really the motivation? Craving for freedom or hatred of suffering? I hate hating, so I'm going to try to stop hating. Something like that. I find the deluded type to be the most difficult to really speak to, because the craving and the aversion is so obvious. Deluded types, self-centered, spaced out. Sometimes the positive quality is part of what I read there, which is a tendency towards natural equanimity, not being as, craving or clinging or attached, not being as aversive or resistant. But a kind of delusional sort of show up as spaced out. I don't really know. I don't have strong views and opinions. I don't really know myself that well. I'm a little, a little confused, a little spaced out. But because I'm not so attached or aversive, I'm not suffering quite, as intensely as the people that are really driven by greed or really driven by hatred. I find it really useful to look at my own mind and tendencies like this to help me not take them so personal, and to bring the antidote to, for the craving type, to a lot of reflection on impermanence, coming to understand that, yeah, you want stuff, but whatever, especially when it's sensual or material, it's not going to work. It's impermanent. Whatever, you can get the stuff, but it's not going to lead to a lasting satisfaction, that reflection on the impermanent nature of things. And for the aversive types, the antidote, the balancing, is love and kindness and compassion. And, learning to have more of an attitude of friendliness towards our environment, towards ourselves, towards others. For the deluded type, it's mindfulness, it's concentration, it's being more present, more investigative. I mean, mindfulness, loving kindness, and the truth of impermanence is our practice, all of our practices, all of the time. It'd be so useful to not only diagnose ourselves, but have some sense of, especially people that are close to us, what their personality type is. Like, for instance, if you're going home for the holidays and you usually have conflict with some of the people in your family. Interesting to take a moment and try to reflect, is it their aversiveness? Is it their clinginess, their cravingness? Is it their deluded, what are their personality? How about mom and dad and siblings and cousins and uncles? And thinking about them, and if you can really sort of diagnose, and you may or may not be correct, but I've found that when I am thinking I'm correct about someone else, it helps me not have as much conflict and not take it as personal. When I know, like, oh, this person's aversive, or this person's greedy, or this person's deluded, it helps me not take it so personal when we see things differently, right? Because a greedy person and a hatred person and a deluded person walk into the same room, but we all have different opinions about the room. And how often is the conflict in our lives about, like, how dare you have a different opinion than me? I'm right, you're wrong. Rather than just seeing, like, oh, your personality sees it that way, mine sees it this way. Rather than either of us being right or wrong, just different views, different opinions, different tendencies. And then often we can kind of come to the middle ground. Even though we enter the room, we enter the situation, we enter the conversation differently, we can come around to where's the common ground? Rather than getting so focused on our disagreements, our different views. So I encourage you, sitting around, if you have a family gathering or a Friendsgiving or whatever you're doing this week on Thursday, you can take some time to be mindful of your own tendencies in those situations, and also everyone else around the table, everyone else that's, if you're gathering with a group, and to just sort of look at all of these people believing our own minds, identified with our own minds, taking it personal, and then the times where there's conflict with each other. And seeing what we can do to not get so hooked into our tendencies and personality or other people's. So those are some of my thoughts about the personality types. What is any questions or comments or clarifications before we end tonight? At home, you can raise your hand in the reactions, and here you can just raise your hand. Please.
Well, I think I definitely identify as an aversive personality type, and I've been making like pretty big effort to have more of a positive mental attitude. I'm just kind of curious, like, how much of this is like naturally, I'm just not gonna necessarily think of things as in a positive light at first, versus like how much of it can be really like training.
I'm not sure. I think that you're going to have to live with that tendency of mind. And maybe the more loving kindness and PMA you try to develop, it'll shift it some. Some propose that maybe the Buddha was an aversive personality type. So you might be in good company. And that maybe one of the proposals is he started with what's wrong, suffering. Right? He walked right into existence with first noble truth, suffering. A greed type would have been like first noble truth, nirvana. The truth is we can get liberated, right? Like a greed type would have started with the good news. An aversive type starts with the bad news and then gets around to and there's a cause of suffering and there's an end of suffering. So you might have a mind that starts with the bad news and it takes a moment to get around to everything's going to be okay. Now there's a counter argument against the Buddha being an aversive type that says that's just he was formulating the Four Noble Truths in a medical model, which first diagnosed the symptoms. The symptom that suffering is an illness, right? And that the symptoms are suffering in all of these ways, the cause of suffering, and then the third is the diagnosis. Can we treat it or not? Is there a treatment? And, or, can we heal it? Third noble truth, yes, we can heal this. The treatment is the Eightfold Path. So some say not aversive type, it's just the Ayurvedic medical model. But maybe he was an aversive type, like, maybe you are in good company. I do feel like that. Like if I was going to, create a religion, I might start with the good news, like those guys that knock on your door, the Christians, and say, I've got the good news. It's like a better sales pitch rather than like, I'd like to share the truth of suffering with you. It's like just not as, I guess it depends on your personality type. For a lot of us, they're like, oh, okay, Buddhism starts with the truth of suffering. That sounds right. It's when you start getting around to loving kindness that we get skeptical. You had me at suffering, but now you're talking about loving kindness, and I don't fucking, what kind of hippie shit is this? Murph.
If someone is a delusional type, well, actually, I don't know if you covered this, you kind of spoke to it just now, but like basically, what are the antidotes? What can we do if we have the type or the aversive type or the delusion type?
I think that the greed type is reflection on impermanence. And sometimes it's the reflection that traditional monastic is like the reflection on loathsomeness. And it's kind of seeing through our tendency to cling to pleasure and material things. And so seeing the impermanence of pleasure and material things, and that also our lust and it's just a dead end, and just reflecting on that and coming to understand. So I would say mostly the impermanence. For the greed type, it's for the hatred type, it's loving kindness in the Visuddhimagga. That's really, said like, do a lot of metta, try to become more loving, more kind, more compassionate towards your own mind's aversive tendency, and then it'll just soften your relationship to things. And I think that for the deluded type, it's mindfulness, present, be more present in your mind, in your body, some concentration, like be more engaged in what you're doing as you're doing it. It's hard to say it because, and I did say it before, because that's what all of us have to do, no matter what our personality is. Mindfulness, loving kindness, compassion. But you might see you need an extra dose of mindfulness, might be more of a focus. You need an extra dose of loving kindness, might become more of a focus in your practice. Maybe we'll leave it there for tonight. Do your best to not suffer too much around the holidays. It's a difficult time for a lot of people. It can be a setup for unnecessary suffering, but maybe also unavoidable. Maybe if you're going into situations where, year after year you find it. I know some people love the holidays. We were Lily and I were coming back from a retreat. So today we were coming from the airport. We were talking to our Lyft driver, and he was like, I love Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday. And we're having 16 people over. And he was really excited about it. And, maybe that's your experience and you have this kind of loving community family thing. I guess I just tend to feel like it's a challenging time, especially for addicts and recovery, and it can be a challenging time. So just wanting to encourage and support bringing your practice to the holidays with you, letting it inform how you show up. Maybe this personality stuff will help. Last time I was here 2 weeks ago, I encouraged the long-term forgiveness practice. So when you're sitting there, sending loving kindness, sending forgiveness to the people in your family as much as you can, so that you're showing up with as much compassion, as much wisdom, as much forgiveness, so that you don't suffer so much about being there. And even if you don't suffer so much and you like being there, a little extra loving kindness and forgiveness, always good. So just encouragement. The next against the stream, for announcements, New Year's Eve, which is going to be on December 31st this year. Here, I think it's a Saturday night. We're going to have a 7:30 to, or maybe it's 7. Anyways, registration's available. We do this yearly intention setting ceremony where we get together, we take the refuges and the precepts, and we have a candle lighting ceremony where you have the opportunity to light a candle and reflect on your intentions for the coming year. And many of you have joined. It'll be hybrid. People can do it at home. You can tune into Zoom, or you can show up in person. You do need to register because there is limited, and there's going to be a special registration link that you need to register for on the website. So please join us on New Year's. Bring your friends. It's a good way to start the year, end the year, start the new year. And then the next Against the Stream retreat is in March, and it's in Portugal. And that was also available on the site. It's a 10-day silent meditation retreat in Portugal. And I know that's a long ways to go for a retreat, but teaching with Jason Siff, who's a friend and colleague of mine, and there's a retreat center over there that invited him, and he invited me to come with, and it's cheap. It's $600 for a 10-day retreat. I mean, you still got to get your ass to Europe, but I know some people in the community have already registered. And again, that's on the Against the Stream site if you're interested in more information or registering. We have a couple of people visiting tonight that are involved in a local neuroscience study, I guess. And they're looking for people. There's some flyers on the desk, and I put one back there on the table. They're looking for people to study your brains, meditators. The requisite for it is that you've been meditating for 5 years and you've done 30 days of silent retreat practice. And if you reach those qualifications and you're interested, they're I don't know, you get a few $100 for doing it. You guys can say something about it if you'd like.
Yeah, it's only 3 days, and yes, $30 an hour that it pays, and it's all open source. We're a nonprofit trying to lower the barrier of entry to meditation for a lot of people and provide personalized tools because people can do that. We have a lot of cool tools at our lab that if anybody qualifies and wants to come by, come check it out. It's fun. We're trying to really resonated with the beginning of your talk, but trying to form a community.
Yeah. And it's right over in Santa Monica, so people on the west side, feel free to speak to these two in the back row here about it if you're interested. Yeah. And I know you guys probably can't hear it at home, but this is mostly for people local here to Los Angeles. If you're interested in it, we could maybe, what's the name of it if people at home want to Google it?
The Institute for Advanced Consciousness
Is,
Studies.
and what's the website?
Advanced.
Hopefully I didn't misspell it. I put in the link for those that want to go check it out.
Thank you.
Lastly, class is done by donation. Against the Stream as a nonprofit organization that is entirely supported, pretty much entirely supported by the generosity of people who attend class or come to the retreats or register for events that we do. The suggested donation is $20 for Monday night. If you can give $20, please do. If you can give more, please do. If you don't have $20 to donate whatever feels appropriate to you, whatever you can afford. And everybody's welcome here, never turned away for lack of ability to donate. But likewise for people at home, there's a link there in the chat. If you can follow through that link and make a donation to help support our meditation center, please do that. And I'll be here next week, and then I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks. I'm heading off to do some travel and some retreat time myself. So hopefully come next week, and then I won't see you for the next few weeks after that. Monday nights will continue to happen. Jason Murphy and Ward Robinson will be subbing the Monday night classes while I'm gone. So Hopefully I'll see you next week. May any goodness that comes from our practice and discussion of the Buddha's Dharma be shared outward in all directions. May each one of us get as free as possible. And together may we create a positive change on this planet. Thanks for being here tonight, and see you soon, hopefully.